Welcome to the Ultimate Bloons TD6 strategy series, where I'm going to be showing you strategies for every single tower from the Dart Monkey to the Beast Handler and every single path in between. This will show you how to diversify your setup and get better, along with seeing some stats, tips and tricks, and all of the strategies for every single one of the towers. And although that the series is geared more towards Chimps mode, this will also show you a lot of tips and tricks that apply to the standard game and will allow you to win with a new style. So today we're going to be mixing it up a bit with Quincy, and I'm just going to be doing 4 heroes in between each section. That way they'll be spaced out pretty evenly, and we'll get to the other towers later on. So Quincy is definitely an interesting hero, memed on a lot, but it is the first hero, and its status is kind of like that. It's just general damage, simple, and mostly early game focused. There's not really much too complex with this hero, but let's get right into it. So Quincy has a 1.0 hero XP rate. That means Quincy will be getting a lot of XP, getting level 20 in all game modes well before that desired amount. And let's just start off by taking a look at the levels. So the first kind of important level is going to be level 3, which will give you the rapid shot ability. Very good ability, just does more damage, why not? Then level 5 is camo. You're going to get this unless it's ABR before the first camo comes anyways, unless you place Quincy really late. Level 6 is a big boost of power. That's when you get 2 arrows at a time, which is really good. And then level 7 is also pretty big, with an exploding arrow every 3rd shot. This can be pretty inconsistent if you're going to use it just to kill leads, but for the advantage of it, it's actually pretty nice. But then we're going to be moving on to level 8, which is triple damage to Moabs. If you're playing on like an intermediate or advanced map, you should get this before round 40, which is really nice. And then level 10 is going to be the Storm of Arrows ability, which can come in clutch quite a few times, but it just rains down a lot of arrows in one specific spot, either to really deal a bunch of group damage or just clean up something that's going by. And then level 11 and on is really just general improvements and fixing some consistencies. There's nothing really too important to note until you get to level 19, which is where Quincy will then shoot 3 arrows at a time. And if you're seeing what's going on here, then you'll kind of know what is a pretty interesting and cool strategy that you can do that differs from things a little bit. But level 20 is going to be the Storm of Arrows being greatly improved, so now we'll actually be able to do quite a lot of damage and deal with some Moabs that are leaking. So pretty interesting and pretty cool. Now, the one thing to note is that Quincy cannot hit DDTs, even though that Quincy can hit leads and see camos. This does not mean Quincy cannot hit DDTs, because DDTs have the black property. So for that you need an MIB. No Glue Storm or Embrittlement would not work, because those don't strip black property. And now on to the synergies, towers and strategies that would synergize with Quincy, and it's really nothing specific, just don't use a strategy that needs a specific hero. So let's take a look at some buffs. So basically you'd kind of always want Berserker Brew applied to Quincy. That will just allow Quincy to deal a lot more damage, and on top of that you probably have a drums in there too. You'd normally get that Berserker Brew, or I guess upgrade it to Stronger Stimulant if you're going to be buffing another tower pretty early on in the game, and from there most times when you're using Quincy, that's just going to be it. You're not really going to want to invest too much in Quincy, because he's going to do a crazy amount of damage. He'll still do a little bit of damage for you later on, but you can take a different approach and super buff him up. First of all, getting MIB so you can actually hit DDTs and Zebras. That's good for cleanup. But then, as you noticed before, there's a lot of projectiles. This thing is super buffable, so we can get Overclock and Call to Arms and make it go crazy. And then if we want to go even crazier, we can get a damage debuff such as the Super Brittle that you just saw there, Glue Storm, or even Perma Brew is a pretty good combination. So as you can see, these ZOMGs, there's a lot of ZOMGs there. They're going down-ish, but if we do that with a Super Brittle here, it's kind of crazy. So normally you'd pair this with a tower that would synergize well with a bunch of these attack speed buff, put Quincy in there, and you have a lot of damage. So we're going to be looking at that kind of really funky, weird way and approach of using Quincy. But first of all, let's just get on with something a lot more basic and something a lot more standard that you would see. And this is really just like how you would typically see Quincy. Like, there is no, I guess, sugarcoating it. It's just there to deal with some early game Bloons. Forget that Quincy exists, and maybe he'll do a bit of damage. You'll probably end up using his level 3 ability to deal with some tight rounds, and then his level 10 ability will definitely come in a lot of use. That's kind of like really the most of it. He's just going to be doing some damage on the side. So here I'm just going to be going for Bloon Exclusion Zone. Really, that's the main focus. Quincy's just going to get like a B-Brew up, deal with the early camo round. As you can see, don't have to deal with camos. Leads I am going to have to worry about because I don't get the level 7 that would allow Quincy to hit leads, and even with that it's not consistent, so don't rely on that to hit the leads. I'm just going to be getting an AMD to guarantee that I'm going to be able to take all of it out. But from there, I'm just going to be working on getting my Bloon Exclusion Zone up, so that's going to be pretty good. But when it comes to Quincy in the early game, he's just going to be actually doing a lot. You can place him down immediately on most maps. On some harder maps, which is where Quincy really starts to fall off a lot, is when you can't place him down immediately. That's like one of the biggest appeals of it. So if you can't place him down immediately, there's a lot less like worth of going, especially if Sada can be placed down immediately and still win. So that's just something to note. When you get him down immediately, there's a lot like less things that you have to worry about, especially like getting into your starting towers and stuff, because Quincy will help with that a lot. So just like kind of in this example, I plopped down Quincy and then went for just a sniper, put that on strong. That makes sure make sure that I don't just like leak to some random thing, which is kind of useful, especially in the early game, like when a pink could possibly slip by. So having that will just kind of make sure that I don't lose. But from there I was able to go into my dart lane just fine, even having to remove the center thing that carts and darts here. Now as you can see, I got a stim eventually, and that's because there's a recent change. I know that I frequently and always talk about how it's a lot more worth it to get just 2 B-Brews, because you get the great consistency of having the alk buff on the tower, and stim doesn't really have much benefit, and it's also more expensive. Well, now they changed things around. They put another $100 on B-Brew and took $100 off stim. So it might, I haven't really done too much testing, but I feel like it's a lot more worth it now, because you're going to be paying $200 if you're going to be getting 2 B-Brews, where you're going to be saving, I guess it would be $200 in the long run, comparatively if you just get stim. So with that, you need 420 and drums to have consistent alk buff being placed on the other tower if the first tower is not like attacking super duper fast. So here it's kind of fine. I'm not really too sure about like the exact details, but I am probably going to be buying stim a lot more because of this change, and Jakubi doesn't like just B-Brew being better than stim, so I guess that's fair. That's something that they did, so you notice that there too. But basically you need to keep in mind of your priority buff so that you don't have your stim going on like a 0-0 dart monkey or something. That would be kind of sad. So just keep the towers that are going to be getting the alk buff closest to each other, or closest to the alk, and then that's going to be good. So I just had my Quincy there getting alk buff, going over to the dart lane, everything's good, and that just allowed me to do the damage, get to Bez. I got a Bloon impact, just deal with the Bloons at the mid game, and I'm just going to be cruising through this late game. There's going to be no issues at all. I can use Quincy's abilities if I need to a little bit, but he's just for the ride doing some damage. And this is like typically how you'd see him used the most, just in the early game to help out, and we'll do something if he needs to. So now let's take a look at a kind of important thing that I did mention before, but you didn't really see because I was kind of just destroying everything in that game. That's the level 10. We'll destroy these big ceramic rushes, namely 76 and 78. 76 is here and it's gone because I used the level 10 storm of arrows. This is a very common thing that you'll see. If you have Quincy, a very nice benefit. A lot of other heroes can do this too, but Quincy is one of them that can, so that's nice. You can also try to put him just on strong, so he will target the ceramics exactly and then switch him over. That might help, but that will just destroy the 78 and 76 waves. 63, there's 3 waves, so it can't really do all of that, but it could do one of them. Now let's take a look at the next example, which is a bit different. So this is trying to go for the whole like debuff crazy damage thing, and I'm just gonna say this isn't typically the most effective. It still is pretty effective, but on harder maps you probably want to skip this unless you want like a fun little challenge. Midnight Mansion is a bit of a harder map, and this is kind of like the hardest that I'd push it on for Black Border, really. It's just kind of a strange strategy, but it's fun, and in theory it works, so let's get right into it. So basically the whole idea is that you get Quincy, and I guess Quincy can do what he does in the early game for the other combinations, but we're going to be getting some towers that will synergize very well with these attack speed buffs and damage G buffs. So the attack zone is one of them. That's going to work out very well. That's what I'm going to get. So we're going to be going just for Esprit. You could also do this with like Glue Storm or Perma Brew, which is a really funky one. Perma Brew got a nice buff, and Quincy Perma Brew would be quite strong too, but we're going to be doing Super Brittle today, so we're just going to be getting Quincy into an overdrive, try to get that attack zone up, and then I'm going to get a Bloon Solver up too for some cleanup to help out with that. Typically you'd want a little bit of cleanup too if it's a harder map. If it's an easier map, you really shouldn't have like many problems at all. It just like kind of proportionately gets way harder, like a curve way up when it comes to the difficulties and viability. So it definitely is like kind of harder to do on the harder maps, but on the easier maps it's going to be no problem. It will work a lot better, and it's a very fun thing to do. Anyways, we're going to get that stim up. We're going to get stim on Quincy and overdrive, because the way this map is laid out, unfortunately I can't get stim on overdrive and Quincy. Well, I can get it on Quincy, but the stim's then going to go on the embrittlement. Not the nicest, but for this map we're kind of forced to do that, unfortunately. I'll get a Ring of Fire to deal with some Bloons on the inside, and then get that Glue Gunner up, and we're going to save up for the not overdrive, it's the attack zone now. Very cool. And then you can see I'm going to be using Quincy's abilities to deal with some of those harder rounds, and then you can use the Storm of Arrow to take out the first wave of 63 to get attack zone. Very cool. So Quincy's abilities will be doing a lot of damage, and we'll be having some just the damage coming from his main attack alc buffed, and I guess with the embrittlement debuff too. And he's actually going to be doing quite a lot. You can see like the damage counts, he's putting in a lot of work, which is really cool. And then get my Bloon Solver, and now we're going to push straight to Super Brittle. So with all the projectiles that he's shooting, the crazy attack speed, and like the damage debuff, Quincy is going to go absolutely crazy and going to be doing a ton of damage. Same with this attack zone, and the Bloon Solver is in for the ride. The Bloon Solver is going to be doing a lot of work too, and it just gets kind of crazy. So we get MIB, we're going to get CTA, we're going to get Overclock, and then from there you can spend, I guess, whatever money you have left on some random support. But usually when you just have like one cheap tier 5 or like a spam of something, could be like an overdrive spam, destroyers will work well, just stuff like that. And then you get your CTA, you get your overclock for Quincy, and your damage debuff. That pretty much like spends most of your cash, so you should be pretty good there. But like around 98, 99, all that stuff's just gonna get absolutely shredded. And Quincy here is doing something that you won't really see a lot of people be able to do, and it's do a lot of damage. Thanks for watching. If you want to help out the channel, you can check out these new videos, like and subscribe for more content, support the channel by becoming a member, and joining the Discord to chat with the community. Bye!